That's grim. Man, I'll tell you what, a lot sure has gone on since the big march on, what was it, Saturday? Saturday, yeah. It's like the news is just full of it. And I don't mean just full of stories. I mean, it's full of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was...
With a shit. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just shocking. It's just shocking how, first of all, how far off base a lot of this is. I mean, when you listen to the interviews and you listen to the people that are in the crowds, they're as dumb as ever.
Oh, it's amazing.
It's amazing what they don't know. But
it's the same regurgitated stuff every time. I mean, it's like, God, how many times do I have to hear this?
Yeah, you can go back to Occupy Wall Street footage and hear the same.
It's the same rhetoric.
Yeah.
The Women's March.
Yeah,
regurgitated.
Yeah. So it's definitely keeping in vein of our activist discussion topic for sure.
Sure.
It's just, but the sad thing about this is the misdirection that's going on. It's the biggest shell game that we've seen in a long time. I mean, there's been causes that these activists will jump on, but this one here seems to be the granddaddy of them all.
Well, sure, the big elephant in the room, and it's starting to come around. People, the smarter end of the spectrum, starting to ask this question: where's the money coming from? How are you able to put this on? So that seems to be the thrust of, people are starting to wise up to this and say, wait a minute,
right?
This crap doesn't come together for free. So how did we get here?
It's interesting to look at the progression and how fast it's ramped up, because you have two high school kids that are basically the poster children for this March for Our Lives program,
right?
And come to find out, one of them wasn't even at the school,
right? He rode his bike there as fast as he could.
According to the most recent reports, that's how it's going.
Yeah, so he grabbed his camera and rode his bike there, and then the other person is clearly communist. I mean, she shows up at a rally,
Cuban flag
with a Cuban flag on her arm. So, I'm sitting here and I actually feel bad for these kids, and I'll tell you why. I look at them and I see them as young people full of energy and ideas that are being manipulated by a group of handlers, by experienced handlers with a clear agenda,
and they're being fed information.
And they're being fed information, and they're being given access that I don't think they would have ever gotten if it didn't meet a specific agenda that they were pursuing.
Sure.
And it's interesting because when you start looking at it, I mean, this thing is like a octopus on a chart. There's just so many arms and tentacles and suction cups on this thing. You just don't really know where to jump on yet, because you just look at the inception of the money. So let's just talk a little bit about that. Let's talk about the 501s and 501c4s
right.
and all that.
So how this money gets there is really interesting. You see where your Crafts and George Clooney's and people like that donate to this thing. You think to yourself, okay, did George Clooney really just shell out $500,000 all on its own? Just George Clooney money, poof, here it is. Where did that money come from? Because I'm not buying for a second. And this is what started me down this trail. George Clooney came up with this all on his own and said, here's $500,000 from one of my last movies. And I'm just throwing that out there as an abstract number. It could be anybody and whatever the number is. But they don't come up with this money on their own. They end up having dinners, get-togethers, things like that with these companies, and these companies donate $50,000 at a time.
Selling access.
And they're selling access.
Sure.
So Clooney says, okay, you can come hang out with us at the next big party. Thanks for the $50,000 donation.
Sure. And then you got the usual suspect, which is George Soros.
Yeah.
He has
$256 million.
Yeah, $256 million already in the pot.
Right.
And then you start looking at all these other organizations, and we'll just kind of start at the beginning with Deborah Schultz Wasserman. Did I get that right this time?
Yeah, no, but that's close enough.
It's Wasserman Schultz. Deborah Wasserman Schultz.
I like the way you say it, because I'm sure if she heard it, it would piss her off.
Sure.
And that makes me smile a little on the inside.
It is. I think it's good to keep them on their toes.
It is.
So she makes a few phone calls, and she starts helping organize this from her end of the table.
Sure.
And so you start looking at the different organizations that jumped in. We talked about them last week a little bit. It was the Giffords Foundation, Move On, Every Town for Gun Safety, Planned Parenthood, Women's March.
Right.
Now, it's interesting to see all those in play, because we've seen them in play in other protests.
Yeah.
And they're also protesting continually for all kinds of different rights. You start looking at, I'm going to go back to the head of that organization. I'm going to talk about Ms. Schultz for a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't know if any of y'all remember the fact that when the DNC came up broke and she resigned
Right there afterwards.
right afterwards, shortly afterwards.
No money. Where'd the money go?
Yeah, the money was gone, and look at the gigantic amounts of money they raised.
Yeah.
They probably had the largest. They were being touted on the news as having the largest coffers
Sure.
of any political organization ever established.
Right.
And so you're looking at this organization run by these same people. They're all joined together in this effort here as well. And you see all this money coming in, and they're what they started under a 501c4?
501c3, and then they had the 501c4 where you can get this dark money that Graham was kind of describing to us.
Mm-hmm.
That we were
earlier,
talking about. So
Yeah, so they don't have to disclose the donors on that list.
Exactly.
So it's kind of it shocked me that actually would exist, that you can do that.
And this is a sidebar. So in
Right.
one of the things that I read, somebody was defending this whole dark money and trying to keep them concealed from the public. And the way that they worded it was to help to shelter these people from being harassed from the public who don't view the views the same way that they do.
So if you had a corporation, and I'm asking, so if you had a corporation here that wanted to donate to this cause, but they don't want their name out there because they don't want people saying, well, I'm not buying product from you anymore. That's why they do it this way.
Yeah, and this politician was
they've learned
defending it.
that.
I'm like, holy crap. You're just, this is fucking bullshit the way you're doing this.
Right.
Well, I mean, you could get money from almost foreign entities if you could hide it
Sure.
that way, couldn't you?
Absolutely.
I mean, money could come from anywhere.
Well, individuals try to seek out privacy.
Sure.
And this was just a mechanism for them to create so companies could.
I get that. I get that. It gets them in the door. So,
Right.
And it gets them in with subterfuge, so you can't go say, hey, Burger King, or again, I'm just using a nebulous organization, whoever, I'm not going to come there anymore because you're donating to this cause that I don't agree with.
I guess we're not going to get off track here, but the whole privacy thing is if you truly try to if you truly try to shelter your privacy, can you successfully do it all the time? The problem I have with this bill is that it's more of a guarantee that they'll be able to safeguard their privacy than if I tried to do it on my own.
Well, that's true too.
So,
I mean, I didn't think of it from that.
Well, they always call it from the trend. They always. It's funny how the left, and I hate to say the left because you're going to try to pigeonhole me, but this is not true. The opposition of this argument always calls for transparency from the other side.
Yes.
Yet they do everything within their legal power
to obscure what they're doing.
to not be
Right.
what they say you should be, which should be a red flag to any thinking person.
Right.
That's like, wait a minute, if they're hiding this, what else are they capable of? Well, when we look at the empty coffers at the DNC, we kind of got to wonder. So we've already identified $256 million from Soros.
Right.
And I'm going to say that this thing, from all the numbers we've seen, is approaching well over $1 billion.
Oh, easily. I think I saw a final number of 1.5 billion.
1.5. I mean, that's not including the donations of planes,
Right.
buses,
Food,
and all these
all
other
that
things.
stuff. Yeah.
That should have been probably given to people that needed it.
Yeah.
Okay. When you look at the marchers, then you look at the people that showed up for the march, they're the same people that were Occupy Wall Street.
Yep.
They're the same people for the women's rights and abortions. And what I thought was interesting was the commentary on the street, commentary and interviews, where they singled out a doctor.
Yeah.
And this doctor was talking about, well, I'm here to save lives, and the NRA takes lives. Yet she's being sponsored by the Planned Parenthood.
Right.
You know, so I think it's funny because to this day, I don't think NRA has killed anybody.
No, not that I'm aware of.
You know,
in fact, they've saved people. If you go back and look at segregation and things of that nature, NRA armed black people to protect themselves.
Right.
So
yeah,
who's the real killer here?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And then,
you got Margaret Sanger on one end.
Right.
Let's if we want to go back to what we're talking about right this second.
Yeah.
You got Margaret Sanger on one end.
Yeah.
You got the NRA on the other. Who really helps people in the end?
Right.
Anybody. I don't care what color your skin is.
Sure.
Who really helped people in the end?
Right.
So there's a fatal flaw right there. This should be a red flag to anybody.
Right.
And I wouldn't trust anybody with my money that was affiliated with that bunch. But when you start looking, so we've looked at the peripheral of the fundraising, But when you start looking at the core for the Friends Committee on National Legislation,
Right.
and there's another one, I forget the name of the other one that they talked about that was also
Peace and justice, something of peace and justice.
a legislative lobby as well.
Yeah.
And what these people basically do is they're kind of like the head of the social justice warrior organizations,
Right.
to where they spend their time lobbying politicians.
And it's interesting how the money gets spent. I mean, you can start where they start giving paybacks to people on the low end,
Right.
where they pay protesters to show up to this stuff. Now this might have been a little bit more organic than protest of the past, but I would be willing to bet. I'd be willing to lay money down with anybody that would say, no, there weren't protesters there that were paid for. I guarantee you there were some paid protesters that were bussed into this.
Sure.
And they were told how to act. They knew that they didn't want this to we were expecting this to get rowdy. I guarantee you they calmed everybody down before they got there. There was marching orders.
Now, to speak to what you were talking about with the money that they're collecting, one of the things that I saw consistently across the articles that I read was that whatever money is left over that doesn't get spent towards like the actual march, they kept saying that it's earmarked towards lobbyists to
politicians. That's where I was getting
to drive whatever agenda that it is that they're trying to achieve. So that money basically pays for the people to work it and push it up the hill.
Sure.
So we were asking earlier about the structure and organization, and somewhere it was disclosed that Jerry Rhodes, former CEO of Greenpeace, she basically volunteered her time to help organize and coach these two kids.
Okay.
So she was the one that basically set herself up through that, and then also the teachers' unions were the ones that were also co-sponsors of this effort.
There were a lot of teachers there. I noticed that when they would interview people. What do you do? I'm a teacher. That was a very common theme throughout watching people interviewed afterwards.
And so what we touched on a little bit last week, and we're going to touch on again today, is we saw a lot of parents asking questions at school board meetings regarding these walkouts.
Right.
And it's picked up a lot since last week. And there's a lot of parents, and none of this is getting coverage on any media outlet whatsoever. But a lot of parents are asking, hey, wait a minute. Why are you forcing our kids to go do this when we want them in the classroom? And then the kids that had the counter argument and their parents were defending their kids, they were all shooed out of these meetings. They were basically told to leave and forcefully, in some cases, left. And so, you get down to the root of this whole thing. So you got the far right side of the chart that we talked about earlier that's bringing in all the money, funneling it to these legislative lobbyist interest groups.
Right.
Being touted by the Hollywood elites as the face of the organizations. And then you're looking at the news media that's propping up the two kids.
Right.
So my question is, what's going to happen to these two kids when they're done?
They're done. You'll never hear from them again.
Yeah.
Well, so what I was thinking about earlier when you were talking about these kids or anybody that's been speaking on behalf of the kids that were at the shooting. Mm-hmm. So you've got, for the lack of a better word, coaching that's going on to feed them statistics, tell them how to work the crowd or whatever. I kind of look at them as they're lumps of clay, and their handlers are basically molding them to appear a certain way.
Right.
So that'll be more appealing to the public, and the public will be more receptive to it. What the kids don't realize is they're basically being formed in to look like fucking dicks at the end. And so when everything's all said and done, the public will
they've already lashed out. I mean, look at the backlash that they face now because they've really overplayed this.
The public will look at these kids like, fuck these kids, and these kids will be like, hey, we followed these people's instructions on what to do.
Yeah.
And the thing is it's just kids telling stories.
You'll never even hear that. They'll never even get to that point where you hear, hey, this is who coached me. That'll never see the light of day.
Go over and sit down, that nice little dick.
Yeah. It'll be on Where Are They Now?
Yeah,
exactly.
It'll be an episode of that because,
or they'll be Dancing with the Stars.
Sure, or they'll pop up in some. Yeah, that would be Dancing with the Stars, the activist
Dancing
edition.
with the communists,
the activist edition. I think that would be. I'd pay to see that just to see what shows up. Patty Hearst is here.
Oh Oh my God!
Everybody bows to her.
Yeah, Tanya Harding. I mean,
The Weather Underground
Yeah.
dances with the stars.
she's dancing to a song called "Lead Pipe Justice."
Oh my God!
Take a knee there, baby.
Exactly.
And it is. It's pretty sad though that these kids. Now, you talked about grooming and handling. There's only so much grooming and handling you can do. If you watch the speeches, the public speeches they gave, they were train wrecks.
Yeah.
They were literally train wrecks. It was worse than watching that Madonna movie where she played Evita.
Yeah.
Eva Perón or what it was.
I can
Yeah.
thankfully say I never saw that.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. And so you take a child that one isn't developed in the cognitive reasoning and decision making thoughts. They may be full of angst and youth, but when you put
Your
them
frontal lobe's not developed.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
when you put them up front of a microphone, in front of a group of people, they're going to do crazy things because they're going to get caught up in a moment.
And they'll go off script.
And they'll go off script and they'll say something that's just bizarre.
Whoops, that popped out.
The one that struck me more than
100%
anything,
emotion.
yeah. The one that thing struck me more than anything was that John Travolta pose at the end of his speech
That was
with
classic.
the fist in the air.
Right.
He stood at the end and he put that fist pump and he looked like it looked like Saturday Night Fever to me.
It did.
It was very unique and probably unscripted. It was just an in a moment thing for him.
Sure.
Uh-huh.
He was feeling his oats. There's no doubt.
Yeah, and and then the whole ideology behind these activist groups to where if they made an argument that made sense, that's one thing.
Right.
But they're not using fact, they're using emotion.
Well, we know that
Uh-huh.
for sure. I mean, they busted themselves with that.
Sure.
You had CNN come out and say, well, I let him kind of skirt the facts, and he didn't quite get the facts right, but what mattered was his passion.
Right.
Right.
Dude,
There's this.
we're talking about my right at this point. I'm
Sure.
talking about cut and dry line.
Yeah.
Fuck his passion at that point.
There's
Right.
this quote that I saw on Twitter, and I'm not going to say the guy's name because I don't always agree with some of the things he said. But this was accurate. Is some of the things that these kids are speaking on, they're speaking on it in a historical manner that doesn't go any further than
What
their
they
own
know.
existence.
Exactly.
So the moment you hit the moment
That's
their
correct.
feet hit the floor, suddenly history began. They ignore anything that happened in the past. Because this one guy made a comment about that the First Amendment right has limits, but the second is completely open. Which that thread alone
Right.
on Twitter went freaking just blew up because
Right.
these guys kept they brought in instances of this is why you're wrong. I can't do this because either the constitute or the bill says I can't, or states have instituted regulations that say that I can't.
Well, let's have that fight next. If you want to fight about the First Amendment, let's go. We'll go. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you, but I'm saying when they make that argument,
Yes.
let's go right down that rabbit hole, and I'll
because
defend
a
the
lot
First
of
they
Amendment
did,
as well.
a lot of
They
people
did.
did say that, make that comment.
Yeah.
So they did go down a hole with the clear backpacks.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, because
yes,
he turned
yes.
right around and said,
Remember that?
Yes, he
It's
did.
a-
Hogg
you're-
turned right around and said, "Oh, you're violating my
my
constitutional
my right to privacy. And what's really funny is how you cling to that
Yeah.
as a life raft,
But
basically. Because when you're sinking in a world of shit,
It's like, kid, you almost
But he-
got it. You
yeah,
almost got
you
it,
almost
kid.
got it there.
he
yeah.
held up females and female hygiene issues
Yes.
as the reason for why the clear backpacks won't work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That was his only argument that, hey, now all of a sudden
Right.
all these things are going to be on display.
sure. Yeah, so that just goes to prove the double standard there.
So there
and
you
they're
go.
not thinking it through.
So there you go. So we're going to get to the end of this. They will have not made a point,
Right.
really. I mean, a cognitive point that we can all say,
Right.
there's some truth to that. So they're used up at the end of this, like
Yep.
we talked about. They're done. They've got probably minimal political careers, maybe as mayors or city councilmen or something along those lines, but they're done. So where are the people left at the end of this? You've raised all this money, $1.5 billion. You know that didn't cost that much to go march, and because so much of that stuff was donated and blah blah blah.
I still think this thing has a lot of legs left.
So where's
I
the
do
money? So where's the money go when it's left over?
Yeah.
It's ending up in the pockets of politicians because that's who they're looking to fund in this. This is where it's going to. Because this money ends up at the end of this in the pockets of politicians.
Of the lobbyists who get FaceTime, who hand the money over to...
Exactly.
Yes.
I mean, I'm jumping ahead of it,
Yes.
but that's where it goes to.
So one of the things that you can look at, let's look at Chelsea Clinton there for a minute. So she gets her college is basically paid for.
Oh, yeah.
So she had $900,000 worth of college that was basically paid for. She gets out of college and she gets a $10 million apartment in New York City. Now,
has a multi-million-dollar wedding.
Yeah, has a $3 million wedding.
$10 million apartment.
Yeah.
And it's with a security detail. Remember this now.
Yeah.
She has a security
With
detail.
guns.
Yeah.
Now,
Imagine that.
the only issue that I had, because I saw that in a meme, but they called it white privilege. And I was like, okay, well, it's way more than that. It is access and influence.
There
what
you go.
It is.
So where I was going to go with these two activist children here, or these two trainees, is that they'll either go away, or they'll rise to the top, and they'll end up in a position somewhere that's an honorarium position that's going to pay them that kind of money.
Exactly.
This is how these organizations recruit
Yeah.
activists. Okay. So basically, if you get to be the poster child and you do what you're supposed to do,
How well do you follow orders?
Yes.
That's what they're looking for
that's
here.
exactly it. And how many do you convert? So I look at guys like Clooney and I look at the Hollywood elite. That's all that is. Because when you get down to entertainers, to me, they're no different than court jesters back in medieval days.
Right.
Except back in medieval days, when a court jester or an actor wasn't funny, they
just lopped your head off.
They just killed him. Okay. they just took him out and boom, he's gone. I'm not suggesting that happens today.
No, but that would be a big body count.
Well, it'd be different, wouldn't it? Because of some of the movies they turn out lately. But so when you look at that, you look at these people that fund the organizations. They don't have the style, they don't have the look, they don't have the ability, but they damn sure have the money. So what they got to do is they got to go out and recruit the fresh face for these causes. And that's what they've done.
Exactly.
So when you flip this whole table over, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the NRA, and I'm not. Go ahead, say what you're going to say.
No, because I just got this like brain fart that basically said the Hog and this Cameron, the Cameron Kamsky guy, and the Cuba girl
Gonzalez.
They basically are the tributes from the Hunger Games. They're the ones that are touted up for. Each representing district.
Yeah.
That I'm like, oh my God.
Art does not stray too far from life, I'm telling you, because somebody has to have a thought to write these things. And honestly, when you think about it, that's actually kind of what you're seeing.
I like that. I like that analogy.
That's kind of what you're seeing, because it's relevant. So they've implanted the idea of this lifestyle in multiple movies and books. Mm-hmm. Have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of kids that follow this.
Right.
And then you're playing it out for them in real life.
And that's the influence.
That's the influence for sure. So that's how you make change, because you don't teach what the founding documents were. You don't teach the freedoms that they give you, okay? And then you question the authority now that does cling to them.
Well, we took civics out, 30, 40 years ago?
Yeah.
They don't. Then went to social studies. They don't teach civics anymore. Civics is not a
I had
class.
to pass a constitution. I had to pass a state constitutional test to graduate.
Yeah.
And I also had to pass a national to graduate.
And one of the most consistent things that I see with these kids that are on Twitter, because again, Twitter is, to me, is like walking in the open area of a high school. You're walking and you're hearing all these
the quad. You're going through the quad, yeah.
And some of the things that these kids say.
Sure.
Like one kid said, I don't want to look back at the last 200 years and say that's. I get all of my instruction from this.
Right.
Basically wants to create his own history or whatever, and I'm like,
well, that's what you do when you're special.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it just blows my mind.
So when you attack an organization, okay, they attack churches for many years,
yeah,
and it was their stance on traditional marriage,
yeah,
versus alternative lifestyles.
It's culture war.
Yeah,
it really is culture war.
Clearly culture war. So when you look at why is the NRA the poster target for these people, it's very, very clear to see why. It's the largest organization that represents firearm owners in the United States of America that is based on the Second Amendment.
Right.
Everything is based on the Second Amendment. When you start seeing them force their attack towards citizens that support law and order and support their rights, they're going to go after the head they think is the head of the snake. And what they don't realize is that it's the citizenry that makes that organization work. Donations are up, memberships are up because of this protest. You have the ILA arm.
Sure.
The
legal arm of the NRA.
Legal arm of the NRA. And so for them, they can't make their argument based on anything other than they have to identify something.
Sure.
They have to identify
You have to have a target.
target.
You have to have something you can put it on. There's got to be blame. There's got to be blame placed somewhere. You're not going to blame the shooter.
Right.
You can't really blame the inanimate object. Yeah.
Right. So we're now, 2 weeks after this now shooting that happened?
Longer than that.
Okay, 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have 3 or more weeks. So we watched all these billions of dollars come in. We watched all these people activate and get motivated and start making movements and changes. What have we done to help schools yet?
Nothing.
Not a damn thing.
And that's just it. That's
not
the
a damn thing.
You get to the end of this, and I believe this portion of it is on purpose as well. I think they want to leave the target out there because going back through what we're looking at and what we're trying to explain is there's all this money that gets generated every time one of these things happens. Mm-hmm. The march happens, but what happens in conjunction with that? Money's generated in huge amounts. Then this ends up getting dispersed amongst all these politicians and these political groups and these organizations, and you're basically generating income. There's no reason for them to really defeat the monster that they say exists because it's an income generator.
It's like turning the money faucet off if you've resolved the problem.
There you go. That's exactly that's how I'm seeing this.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of you will as well when you start putting these pieces together. Because don't just take what we say. Do the homework. Because
follow the money every time. Yeah. Go look and see where the money's going.
Sure. Who's always in charge of these protests? It's the same characters every time.
Same groups.
When you look at the real injustice here, the real injustice is to the people that are being used by these big organizations. The teachers' unions are abusing their rights with the teachers.
Sure.
The teachers either have to fall in line or they lose.
You pay or you lose your job.
You lose your job.
You pay to the union or you lose.
You lose your job.
That's simple.
So you got to follow the agenda. So what you end up doing is you end up taking that person against their will, changing their will, because they have to learn to live with it. I personally doesn't work for me. If you come at me and try to make me change, I'm probably going to go to work somewhere else. I'll
find another occupation.
Yeah, I'll just go do something else. I don't need this to get by. So you start looking at what happens there, and you start looking. Okay, so you got a judge now that says, "Well, we just need to abolish the Second Amendment." A former judge, a retired Supreme Court judge,
Supreme Court,
Supreme Court judge. So I sit here and I go, so the ultimate goal really isn't to protect the kids. It's being sold as that because none of this money is going to any schools.
Have they done it
yet?
Well,
they want to raise taxes on. They want you to pay a tax to buy guns. They want you to pay a tax on the guns you own. They want you to pay more money for the ammunition you have to fund these things. They want you to take. They want to take away from you to fund. When they have $1 billion or more dollars.
I got a Chris 20 that says that they won't do it. Even after they start taking the money from you to tax you for that, it won't end up there.
Hell no, it won't. It'll go into something else.
How much Social Security you got left?
There you go. You were going just where I was going to go with Social Security. So you have to ask yourself, really, so the same people doing the same routine over and over, making millions of dollars, the money's going to disappear. The kids are going to end up on some kind of reality talk show somewhere. But we still have students that are open and vulnerable in schools. They won't tell you about the Maryland incident where the resource officer stopped the shooting.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's story after story of this happening in other schools across the country that does not get the airtime.
It happens every day. Well, maybe not in schools, but it happens every day in real life.
Now,
Firearms save people's lives on a daily basis.
Well, and the Second Amendment's pretty clear. It's not about hunting. It's about protecting citizenry from tyranny. Now, what I think is interesting is how they teach kids the word democracy is rolled out of their mouth multiple times. And the reason why it's a republic is to keep the majority rule out.
Individual rights. It's what it's all
about. It's about the rights in the law. So if you take the majority and these people spend all their time manipulating the majority, they're trying to stack the deck.
Sure.
Okay? So they know if they get enough people behind this cause, all it is another wedge now to say that conservative lifestyle is bad and evil. These guys cling to guns, they cling to God, they cling to the law, they cling to rules made by old men. They're not progressive enough to be in charge of this world. You had a smart-ass kid on Bill Maher the other day telling him that.
Yeah.
Well, your generation, he told Bill flat out, your generation is just fucking away what we're doing.
Those were his exact words.
You know, and I'm like, dude, wow, first of all, if a 17-year-old talked to me like that,
Right.
you're off the stage and your mom, go get your mom and dad
Yeah.
to take you home and wash your mouth out with soap. If my parents heard me
Actually, I'll pay the legal fee.
yes,
My dad would
to
have
spank that kid myself.
Oh yeah.
public spanking, yeah, there you go.
My dad would have raked my
Oh,
teeth
yeah.
if that would have fell out of my mouth in public.
Yeah,
No
and-
doubt about it.
And so all they're doing is promoting bad behavior. They're giving bad information to promote bad behavior.
Yep.
And they're ultimately after the Constitution of the United States because they want to take your ability to stop them from enforcing their will on you.
You know, to tangent off of something y'all said just a while ago about events that happen that don't get
Resolved.
that don't get publicized.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
As-
okay, yeah.
How I look at it as is people, okay, to take the term Dark Ages, the Dark Ages is now a technology. I can actually not report something that happened only because it will go against the agenda that I'm trying to push.
It's the same concept. It's control.
It's the whole thing is does a tree when a tree falls in the woods, does anybody hear it?
Right.
You have to be there. You know.
Sure.
But if nobody reports it, it's like, no, I guess it didn't fucking happen.
Right, and it goes down as that.
Yeah.
No, you can't hear it.
So
That's
the
what
whole
it's
thing
reported
where,
as.
where
Yeah.
you have the media who has control over a report, taking your story that would actually benefit somebody somewhere, and it doesn't get reported. I mean, to me, that's just the digital dark age right there.
Exactly. Well, that's where we live.
Well, I think looking at this deal, our big question is going to be when the music stops, who loses a seat? And where's the money?